Okay, the 1997 Red Wings win a Stanley Cup. The 1988 Red Wings are going to go on an emotional journey back there. But on the way there, the Central Division's actually won by Dallas with a 49-22-11 record. Detroit's second at 44-23-15, followed by the St. Louis Blues at 45-29-8. Remember when the Central was a lot weaker? When they were the Norris and this was the Smythe? That's not the case anymore. The Phoenix Coyotes 35-35-12 managed to be 500, followed by Chicago at 30-39-13 and the Toronto Maple Leafs at 30-43-9. So Toronto is still languishing as they go through a rebuild. Colorado wins their division at the record of 39-26-17. So not as dominant a record as three teams in the Central, but still they get the number 2 seed because they win their division. The LA Kings 38-33-11 are the only other team in that division with a plus 500 record. The Oilers 35-37-10. San Jose 34-38-10. Calgary 26-41-15. Anaheim 26-43-13. And languishing in misery are the Vancouver Canucks at 25-43-14. The New Jersey Devils win their division with a 48-23-11 record, followed by the Philadelphia Flyers at 42-29-11. The Capitals are 40-30-12. The New York Islanders 30-41-11. So there's no real concern about who's going to make the playoffs and miss the playoffs in this division because the New York Islanders are nowhere near it. The Rangers 25-39-18. Florida 24-43-15. So the bottom completely falls out for the Florida Panthers this season. Followed by Tampa. You want to talk about the bottom falling out? It did for Tampa too. 17-55-10, but it's okay because Michael Jordan's coming. I'll get to it. Trust me. Pittsburgh wins their division at 40-24-18, followed by Boston 39-30-13. The Buffalo Sabres 36-29-17. So you'll notice that in this instance, the Northeast Division is much stronger than the Atlantic. The Montreal Canadiens 32-13, followed by the Ottawa Senators at 34-33-15, who barely qualify for that last playoff spot if you don't qualify the fact that actually they made it by quite a bit. But I just mean they were barely over 500, and to make it look like they were the number 8 seed, but it was close. It really wasn't. Carolina, that's right, they're Carolina now, 33-41-8. So Carolina fans all excited because they got a sub 500 team that can't make the playoffs. And they wonder why they have trouble selling tickets. July 2nd, 1997, the Dallas Stars sign Eddie the Eagle Belfour, and he'll lead Dallas to grand, wonderful things, but not yet. February 6, 1998, Bertuzzi and McCabe are the return for Trevor Linden, but all Canuck fans see is that this big meanie, Mark Messier, has come in and driven Trevor Linden out of town. Bertuzzi and McCabe will be a fantastic return when you consider McCabe is one of the pieces they'll use to get the Sedins. But the fact is that Canuck fans cannot forgive. Already, we're at the point where they can't forgive Messier, and he's just arrived. October 19th, 1997, Barrasso becomes the first U.S.-born goalie to pass 300 wins. And he's not in the Hall of Fame. Why? Okay, it doesn't matter. October 26, 1997, Yzerman becomes the longest-serving captain in NHL history as he goes through his 12th season. So, pretty solid record for Stevie Yzerman and pretty excellent captain as well. October 3rd of 1997, Vancouver beat Anaheim in Tokyo, the first regular season game played outside of North America. So, I remember as a Canuck fan thinking, wait, they're playing 2 games in Japan. Doesn't that kind of hose teams here that they play games over there? Like, I mean, for the fans, they don't get a chance to see them. Anyways, and on November 27, 1997, remember Michel Petit from yesterday? Well, today he played for his 10th team. 10th when he played for Philly. The Hart Trophy that year goes to Dominic Hasek. The Art Ross goes to Jaromir Jagr. The Norris goes to Rob Blake. The Calder goes to Sergei Samsonov of the Boston Bruins. And Jere Lehtinen is your Selke winner for the Dallas Stars. So at least there's some trophies going to Boston and Dallas. Not the silver one, but that'll happen. Hasek wins the Vezina. And the Jennings goes to Marty Brodeur of the New Jersey Devils. The Adams for Coach of the Year goes to Pat Burns of the Boston Bruins. So Good job. And I was happy when Burns was the coach of the Boston Bruins. I really honestly was. It was a fun time. Now, Ron Francis wins the Lady Byng. The Masterton goes to Jamie McLennan, right? The Jamie McLennan from TSN. The Hasek goes to, or the Hasek. It should be the Hasek Award, shouldn't it? Because Hasek becomes the first goaltender in history to win 2 Hart trophies. And he also wins the Pearson that year. The Conn Smythe goes to Steve Yzerman. The Patrick for growing the game in the States goes to Peter Karmanos. I'll let Hartford fans vent while I say that. Neil Broughton, John Mavicic, and Max McNabb. The Clancy goes to Kelly Chase of the St. Louis Blues. That's right, Kelly. You won that year. And the number 1 draft pick is Vinny Lecavalier, who the owner of the Tampa Bay Lightning said was the Michael Jordan of hockey, which was just cringeworthy when he said it. And we all felt bad for Vinny when he said it, because Vinny wasn't expected to come in and be a world beater. He was an excellent number 1 draft pick, but he was not expected to be a world beater. And here's the owner, like, he's the Michael Jordan of hockey. And it's like, no. He played 1,212 games in his NHL career, had 421 goals, 528 assists, 949 points, split between Tampa, Philly, and then his stint at the end with LA a couple years ago. Their first team All-Stars are Forsberg, Yager, LeClaire, Lidstrom, Blake, Hasek. That's pretty solid. Your second team All-Stars, Gretzky, Solani, Kachuk, Pronger, Niedermeyer, and Marty Brodeur. Before this season got started, about a week after the Detroit Red Wings won their Stanley Cup, June 13th, 1997, there's a limo crash. And Vlad Konstantinov is in a wheelchair after that crash. And it was a devastating event that Detroit really kind of rallied around. And I think in their matchup against Dallas, I think it gave them that emotional lift that Dallas just didn't have. And Dallas was a bad matchup for Detroit, and we'll see that. Conference quarterfinals that year, Ottawa beats New Jersey in 6. Montreal beats Pittsburgh in 6, which was a thrilling series. Buffalo beat Philly in 5. So Hasek is starting to take Buffalo places in the playoffs. Washington beats Boston in 6. I don't know why I'm starting to say Vancouver. They're nowhere near the playoffs. Dallas beats San Jose in 6. Edmonton beats Colorado in 7, which was a huge upset. Like, that was a huge, gigantic upset right there to see the Edmonton Oilers knock out the Colorado Avalanche. I was shocked, as was most of the hockey world. Detroit beats Phoenix in 6. I remember being kind of upset with that one because Phoenix was so close. They just couldn't quite do it. St. Louis beats LA in 4 straight. So LA, thanks for coming out. St. Louis dispatches them quickly. And there's some optimism in St. Louis at this point in time. The conference semifinals, Washington, after knocking out Boston, moves on to Ottawa and knocks out Ottawa. So now I'm left with nobody to cheer for in the East except Washington. Buffalo takes Montreal out in 4. That made me kind of happy. Not going to lie. Hasek was dominant. So Buffalo wins 8 of their first 9 games in the playoffs. Dallas beats Edmonton in 5. So revenge for the year before. Huzzah. Fantastic. Great. Detroit beats St. Louis in 6. Not the first time they've met in the playoffs. Won't be the last. Conference finals. Washington beats Buffalo in 6. Very, very good series between 2 of the best goalies in the game. Olaf Kolzig and Dominik Hasek. And an amazing series overall. And that was fun to watch for me because I didn't really have a favorite in. I wanted Washington to win, but I was okay with Buffalo too. Detroit beats Dallas in 6 because it's a bad matchup for Dallas. And when Dallas finally climbs that mountain in 99, part of the reason that they did it, they didn't have to worry about Detroit. And that's just reality. In the finals, Detroit sweeps Washington, and it's upsetting to Washington fans. They win 2-1, 5-4 in overtime, and I watched that game. That second game was, as a Caps fan, I felt gutted at the end of that. I was like, they were so close. The feeling for me was this. If Washington had come out of Detroit with the split, it would have put some pressure on Detroit. It might have given Washington that opening that they needed to get themselves to a Stanley Cup. Look, they had 92 points. They weren't a bad team, and they weren't that far behind. It's just Detroit wins by 1. They go to Washington, they win by 1. There's nothing more frustrating than to watch your team slowly getting swept And yet they're not losing by a lot. You kind of wish they were, because then it'd look better. But when they're losing every game by a goal, well, at least in the Stanley Cup Finals Game 4, Detroit wins at 4-1. So Washington comes up short in the finals, and interestingly enough, the Detroit Red Wings talked to the NHL and Gary Bettman, and the NHL and Gary Bettman agreed that Vlad Konstantinov's name can go on the Stanley Cup in 1998, even though he didn't play a single game for that team. They gave him the cup. They had him out there on the ice, and it was a moment that, even though I didn't want to see Detroit win it, I wanted to see Washington win it. I could not deny the emotion of that moment. I could not deny the power of that moment, and that driving towards that moment may very well be what got Detroit to that Stanley Cup. They wanted to win one for Vladdy. In the playoffs, your goals leader is Fedorov with 10. This Detroit team does not have a dominant point-producing scorer at this stage. They have a bunch of really good scorers, so you don't have one line you can just shut down and then not worry about it. And they all play defense, too, so it is an absolute nightmare to play the Detroit Red Wings at this time. Your assist leader is Yzerman with 18. Your points leader is Yzerman as well with 24, and he does win that Conn Smythe, which he didn't win in 97. Vernon got it, so it was nice to see he got it in 98, because, of course, you don't know if you guys can get back to get another shot at it, right? Your wins leader, Osgood, with 16. He will get no respect with those 16 wins, because he has a .918 save percentage. The goalie he beats, Kolzig, had a .941, and Hasek in that year's playoffs, I think, had a .938. So, again, the .918 for Osgood has this whole narrative going that, yes, Osgood wins Stanley Cups, but they're not winning it because of him. That's not why they're winning it. So that's where that comes from. Kolzig has 12 wins, but again, he has that reputation of being a big game player because he's only the goalie. Pretty darned awesome. The NHL players went to Nagano, and this was the first time the NHL took a break for the Olympics, and it went pretty well, unless you cheered for Canada or the States. The States was out early. Canada ended up finishing 4th, but if you're Czech, this was a big time for you. You got to see Jágr win gold, and you got to see Hasek get the gold as well. And the aura around him, the air of invincibility that exists around Hasek is never greater than after that win at Nagano, and then his run in the playoffs. He's got the back-to-back hearts. He just looked unstoppable. But the team that he had in front of him just wasn't quite good enough to win that Stanley Cup. Russia got the silver that year as well. So Bure was that close to gold, and Russian frustration at the Olympics will continue right up until 2018, which is when the NHL stopped sending players to the Olympics. But there you go. The 1997-98 Stanley Cup. Your winners once again is Detroit, and this Stanley Cup is right here. Right there, 1998. Right there. And these are spoilers, so don't read those numbers, because those are spoilers. So stay right out of there. It's not your place to read the spoilers. Okay, 1997-98 season. And an emotional one for Detroit fandom, for Detroit players, and for Vladimir Konstantinov. And just as an update, Konstantinov, in everything I've read about him, is in better shape than he was then, although he still has trouble with walking and with speech. He is more mobile than he was when he was handed that Stanley Cup in 98. And no player in Detroit has worn the number 16 since that incident, although it hasn't officially been retired. I think it will be. I'm kind of surprised it hasn't been, but out of respect, players haven't worn that number since he left after that limo accident. And that includes Brett Hull, who'd worn 16 his entire career, wore 17 when he was a member of the team. So tremendous respect to Konstantinov and to the Red Wings, who I may not have cheered for at the time, but you got to respect what they did. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.